continue talking some investing themes. Here joined by David Botset, Head of Equity Product Management and Innovation at Schwab Asset Management. David, great to see you.
Good to see you.
We just spoke a couple weeks ago when you were in New York talking about the drop in the fees for bond funds. I'm looking at your survey here that says millennials are more interested than ever than buying fixed income. Coincidence? I know maybe the calendar doesn't line up, but...
The calendar doesn't line up necessarily, but it was a very interesting finding for us to see that millennials in particular are very interested in fixed income, perhaps allocated more than what we're seeing from Gen X or baby boomers, counter to what you may expect.
Wow, yeah, I feel like I'm making a difference. You know, I'm a bond guy, I'm talking bonds all the time. I'll take some credit for it then. But what is that? Is it just like because of the focus around the Fed and stuff, where like it's become a more popularized subject matter, or what?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on. Number one, there's a larger acceptance of fixed income ETFs than there's ever been before.
Okay.
So the willingness to jump in, buy a fixed income ETF for that exposure rather than individual bonds is one element of that.
The vehicle, really,
the wrapper, the acceptance of it. That's exactly right.
Okay.
The other perspective we're seeing, and we at least think we're seeing from the survey data, is that the younger generation has tended to be a little bit more conservative than maybe their parents.
Oh, wow.
You know, having gone through the tech boom, the great financial crisis, in some cases, they've paused on being too aggressive in their portfolio and have over-allocated to bonds.
So what, did they learn their lesson in the COVID speculative trading boom? Everybody got their haircuts and they're buying bonds now? Because that didn't look very conservative.
That did not look very conservative, but I think it's also a matter of who you're surveying, right? We looked at both ETF investors and non-ETF investors, not necessarily those who speculated in some of the things we saw during the meme craze.
I see. Okay, now, so if you move out of ETFs, what does that kind of interest or asset class breakdown look like? What were the big findings there? Because we were just talking about the ETF part of the survey specifically, right?
That's right, and that's what the survey focused on, is really looking at both ETF investors and non-ETF investors and what their propensity would be in the future to buy ETFs and what it is today. So when we look in that space, we're finding a couple of things. Number one, they're focused on their long-term objectives, right? They're thinking about retirement, they're thinking about saving for future wealth. And when they do that, they're also thinking about the asset classes that they're investing in. A lot of in equity, fixed income, real assets, kind of your traditional asset allocation elements.
So, okay, the vehicle definitely plays a role. Some of the experience maybe too kind of changing across generation, which certainly makes sense. I mean, the fees probably big too, right? I mean, that still is I know a lot of mutual funds have brought down their fees, but there still is a general gap.
There is a gap, and we've been doing this survey for over a decade. And consistently, the number one reason people say they select ETFs is the low expenses, right? Number two, number three, number four, they've increasingly moved higher. So the gap between fees and everything else is narrower than it used to be, but fees remains the number one driver.
You also had some questions geared toward the subject of personalization.
Yes.
And I would, I guess, assume now with active ETFs, with, passive ETFs, factors, styles, sectors, there's literally everything, so you could piece together things very specifically. There's even single stock ETFs now.
Yeah, and what we're seeing there is a couple of things. You mentioned that, maybe dividends, it may be growth value to personalize, but you're also seeing things like thematic, right? If you have a particular interest, Gen AI this year has been top of everybody's list. Can I get that theme, get that exposure that I want in an ETF? Or if I move beyond themes, how do I think about things like ESG? If I want to invest with my values in my portfolio, using products like that to also personalize.
I'll put you on the spot a little bit. When you look at the survey and then you look around here, because I see a lot of active management, I see a lot of ETFs too. Does it seem like the advisor community is appropriately ratioed active to ETF offering, like mutual versus ETF offerings compared to what the people want?
I think they are, but there is a bit of a gap in education on the active wrapper, right?
Okay.
I think we're seeing that in the survey data, is that individual investors are interested in active strategies, active in ETFs, but they need more education.
Okay.
So I look around this community as I focus on that education, understand the client need, and help them understand what the active products can deliver.
All right, great stuff. Good setup for us too, because we're going to get into a specific type of product in a second. David Botset, good to see you. Great to catch up.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. David Botset, Head of Equity Product Management and Innovation at Schwab Asset Management.